Why do simple things feel so hard? Walking for 30 minutes a day, communicating with our friends, family, spouse, other loved ones, even saving for retirement. The process for these things is often incredibly simple. But the reality is, for most people, it can feel really hard. I know for sure that's going to resonate with a lot of people out there because simplicity often disguises the difficulty of consistent action. While the steps might be straightforward, human nature, our habits, and life's pressure just make them harder to follow through. That's the topic of today's compound action, how small steps create massive change. I'm Corey Applin, and I'm really excited to talk about this today because this is something for sure I've struggled with. I think everybody struggles with this at some point in their life. I mean, it leaks into really everything: our health and wellness, our finances, um, our growth as people, our communications, our ability to climb up in our position at work. Um, there's almost nothing that's untouched because when something feels daunting, regardless of whether it is or not, oftentimes people fail to even start. And it's that inaction that oftentimes just prevents people from truly living a free life, a life they want to live, the life that they're proud of, that they can look back and say, like, okay, I did it. I did a great job. Um, I of course have the most experience in health and wellness, and I just see it every day, how making small steps in the beginning seems so challenging for people. Even just walking 30 minutes a day. People come up with a lot of reasons, right? Find it hard to carve out the time. They're busy. They're tired. They have lack of motivation. They're not well rested. They haven't slept very well. And so this, sedentary lifestyle often creeps in despite the simplicity of the solution. Going for a 30-minute walk daily, I would almost relate it to like watering a plant daily. It's a simple task, but if you neglect it, what's going to happen to the plant? It's going to slowly wither over time, which I've honestly had a lot of problems with. I have a really difficult time keeping plants alive. It's only when the plant's dying that we realize the consequences of skipping the small, really simple, easy tasks. Same thing can be said for our health. Everybody knows that when they make investments in their health now, it's going to pay off dividends 10, 20, 30 years down the road. But oftentimes we don't really feel the pain of it until we've already started to develop medical problems. Maybe diabetes, heart problems, blood pressure starts creeping up, cholesterol starts creeping up. Our joints start to hurt. We just, honestly, we just feel like crap when we get out of bed in the morning. And it's like, well, what happened? Well, it was not one thing. It was decades in many cases of like avoiding the small, simple things that were necessary in order to preserve and maintain good health. But we also see it bleed over into financial stability. I mean, this is a big problem here in the US. Lack of building a nest egg. I mean, the process for it's very simple. Spend less than what you earn and save or invest the rest. But despite knowing that, 1 in 5 Americans, they have no savings. 50% couldn't cover $1,000 emergency expense. And, ironically, many of those same people that don't have $1,000 of emergency savings, they still have $1,000 iPhone in their pocket. There's a lot of reasons behind it, right? There's simplicity in budgeting on paper, but the challenge in practice, I think, oftentimes comes to our consumer culture, emotional spending, societal pressures to keep up. The average American right now spends almost $300 per month on entertainment. This according to a Yahoo Finance article. While a survey done by MyProtein, they surveyed over 1,000 people, showed on average those same people are only spending about $150 per month on health and wellness. So probably not a big shock that we have like the best entertainment, but the poorest health. We have credit card spending, impulse buying out of control. And when you think about it, like the act of spending, it's like quick, it's effortless, it's gratifying. What's that term? People say, like, oh, I have a hole burning in my pocket. We just want to spend that money. Where the act of saving can almost feel like a sacrifice. So that's why so many people find themselves in debt, even though they may understand the basic financial principles. We can also see it in our relationships and, how we communicate with the people we care about, our parents, our kids, other family members, our spouses, probably top of the list there. When we communicate openly, we spend quality time and show appreciation. The act of saying, like, hey, you did a great job today, it's not challenging, right? There's nothing difficult about it. But in reality, life's distractions, work stress, different emotional needs, they make it feel really hard to follow these, seemingly pretty simple guidelines. People often let simple communication slip. When people let that communication slip, it leads to misunderstanding, disconnections, arguments about things that are like nothing, but there's just like some disconnection in the communication. Maintaining those relationships, it's like tending a garden, right? It's simple, again, to water, prune, all those things. But when you neglect it, the weeds begin to grow. The consequences of the neglect, they usually only become apparent after it's already too late. Career and productivity is another area where, again, simple steps can seem really difficult. Like what does it take for most people to advance in their career? They have to work hard, they have to be consistent and take initiative. But there's a lot that can get in the way: the daily grind, the distractions, the fear of failure, holding people back from taking the right actions that could actually, move them forward, make them more financially free, make them feel like they're more rewarded in their career. It's almost like, climbing up a steep hill. Like in the beginning, it seems pretty simple. You can kind of get by just by walking, but it gets more challenging as you go up. Not everyone's prepared for the rocks falling at them, to jump around the bushes or anything like that. And it forces them to take actions that are outside of their comfort zone. I think this is most notable in personal development, because to grow, we have to keep stretching ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And I see this all the time. I'm sure you do too. There's people that just get stuck in their ways. They're never really willing to go outside of what's just easy and comfortable for them, and they don't grow as a result. I mean, you can predict what their life is going to be like 20 years in the future, because it's going to be exactly like it was for the last 20 years. In my organization, we call it stretching the rubber band. The more you're able to stretch the rubber band, you don't want to break it. You don't want to stretch too hard, too fast. But the more you can stretch the rubber band and push yourself outside the comfort zone, the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you achieve, and ultimately, the more you start to live the life that you really want. But even there, it can be hard to stick to the small habits, the consistent actions, the building of self-discipline, right? Meditation, daily journaling, gratitudes, waking up early, all those things that help with productivity, because of distractions and procrastination and, just like the discomfort of starting something new. There's a term I learned about that I love. It's called the self-help book syndrome. And many people read these self-help books because they want to feel inspired, right? The ideas, they just sound so great and they're so simple. They're broken up into like really easy to follow formats. But when it comes to taking action on the principles, they fall short. So they end up just collecting these self-help books and, maybe even giving themselves a pat on the back, like, oh, look at how many books I've read, but they never actually apply it into their real life. Because ultimately, the difference between simple and easy is the gap between knowing and doing. Because while the steps, they're often clear, they're uncomplicated, human nature, emotions, habits, our environment make them hard to follow through with consistently. And what I find so ironic here is, like, humans are so good at getting through the tough situations. A death in the family, a major move, stress at home, stress at work, these like big things that almost seem insurmountable, but we just naturally create strategies to get through them. But then again, break it down in simple things like getting more hydrated, drinking more water every day, getting more protein or healthy fats in your diet. And just that concept for a lot of people seems really, really challenging even to get started. But why is that? Why are we so hardwired to resist these simple actions? And there's a lot. I mentioned a couple already, but part of it is just human nature. We are creatures of habit, right? Habits are a way for our body to conserve energy and create shortcuts in our activities. I always like to think of it as like your brain thinks in a way like, well, I've done things this way and I'm still alive, so doing things this way must be good for my survival. We know that's not true. Obviously, many things we do are actually counterproductive to our physical and emotional health, but they've gotten you this far in life. And so instinctually, maybe on a subconscious level, your brain and body want to keep doing things exactly the way that they've already been done, because the brain is like hardwired to protect us from uncertainty. It's the uncertainty, that push outside of the comfort zone, that sends that warning signals like, hey, am I doing the right thing? Again, even if those things are for the positive, even if you have the knowledge, right? Everybody knows that broccoli is better for you than pasta, right? Why is it so much harder to get our greens in than it is for us to get our carbs in? Because our brain's hardwired to just do things exactly the same way that they've always been done. We crave that homeostasis, that stability. And so a shift away from the baseline, even if it's positive, it's going to require extra energy and extra effort, which can feel exhausting. It can feel overwhelming, especially when the payoff isn't immediate. Because, we all have this like instant gratification bias. If we do something and we feel good after doing it, it sends these great, neurotransmitters to our brain. We feel really good afterwards. And so that instant gratification can drive future actions. Whereas, walking for 30 minutes every day or saving a portion of your paycheck, that's not going to provide any immediate sense of accomplishment or gratification. It does later on, right? We have this prolonged gratification, which, if we can train that into ourselves, can be very successful in goal achievement, because that's when people can look back 90 days and say, oh my gosh, look at the changes I've made in my body. Look at the changes I've made in my financial situation. Look at the changes I've made in just like my happiness and well-being. But because those things aren't immediate, our brain chemistry doesn't kick into action until after we've gotten to a point where we've made substantial enough changes that we're actually starting to see those changes in our day-to-day life. And we can also put up emotional resistance. Like I mentioned, fear of failure earlier, which certainly is a pervasive problem, especially if someone has failed at something over and over again. I mean, losing weight is probably the most obvious example of this. People that want to lose weight, it's not like it's their first time they've ever wanted to lose weight. Many of them have been on this yo-yo roller coaster cycle over and over again. They've tried the prepackaged foods. They've tried counting calories. They've tried going to the gym. They've tried keto, paleo, South Beach, whatever you want to call it, intermittent fasting. And yet they rebound and they gain the weight back again, which can prevent them from even wanting to try again. Fear that this time around it's going to be exactly the same as last time around. But I also think that something that's not talked about enough is fear of success. That fear of like, okay, what if I do lose the weight? How is my family going to look at me? How are my friends going to look at me? Are they going to judge me for not eating the same way that I used to? What if I do change my finances and become more financially stable and I move to a new neighborhood? Are my friends and family going to look down at me because I'm not living in the same neighborhood as they were? There can be a disconnect psychologically of this future self, the person that saves money and exercises and eats healthy and communicates with their spouse, that just seems so disconnected from the person we are today. There's a great quote that I've always loved, which is, to become the person we want to be, we have to shed the skin of who we are today. And what that means for me is it's almost like the death of the person we are today. If you want to reach the next heights in your business, for example, say someone's making $1 million a year, or their business is making $1 million a year, and they want to grow that to be a $10 million per year business. Well, the person that's owning and operating and running $1 million business is not the person that's owning and operating and running the $10 million business. So they have to leave behind that person that initially grew and built the business and become the person who's running the $10 million business. Only once they become that person are they actually going to be able to grow and achieve that goal. So in our day-to-day life, we can almost mourn, this version of ourselves that we become so accustomed to, the version of ourselves that doesn't drink enough water and doesn't eat very healthy and doesn't exercise regularly and doesn't save or anything like that. We become attached to that we define that as part of who we are. That's our self. And so in order to achieve these things that on paper sound really good, these are things we legitimately want, legitimately care about, we almost have to mourn the death of the person that we currently are. That way we can start to move in the right direction to become that new person. And that can be extremely challenging, especially when the outcome is uncertain. Like we don't actually know if we're going to achieve a goal, but we must believe it in order to even take the right steps to get there. And it can come with a lot of overwhelm, because even simple tasks, like at the end of a long day, managing personal life, managing business life, making decisions, raising kids, spending time with grandkids, all of those things, even the simple ones, can feel like too much. And that's especially true in the beginning, taking those initial steps. What do people say all the time? They say, once I'm at the gym, I feel great. I love exercising. It's getting to the gym that's so hard. Every marathon runner had to start somewhere. They didn't just wake up one day and were experts at running. They had to buy the shoes. They had to lace them up. They had to walk out the front door and actually just start running, and then build that habit of consistency. Because while a task might seem simple, it often requires breaking it down into, the smaller steps. Each of those steps, they demand focus, time, energy, and all of those things can feel overwhelming or even create these like internal barriers to even getting started. And people can totally run into the trap of like comparing themselves to other people, right? They see other people succeeding. They see other people making progress. Maybe they have a friend that went through a weight loss program that did excellent, and then they're going through that same program and they're not seeing any progress. It can feel really daunting. Like they might just think, like, if it's that simple, why haven't I achieved it already? That can create feelings of inadequacy, frustration, which can make a task seem even harder than it is. People can also develop this like all or nothing mentality. Like either I'm eating healthy or I'm not eating healthy. And that's probably the core of how yo-yo dieting actually happens, right? I mean, people are eating pretty healthy for a while. They're seeing results. They're happy. They might have a special occasion, a holiday, a vacation, something like that. And, instead of being able to take that small place in time, say like, oh, I didn't do great that day. That's okay. I can start again today. They can take the mentality like, well, I already went off track, so why should I even try? And that's when a day turns into a week, turns into a month, turns into a year. And they look back, they're 10 to 15 pounds heavier, and they say like, well, what happened? I don't even know how I got here. And oftentimes that's a direct byproduct of lacking, structure, lacking accountability. Accountability is such an important point, because if we're only accountable to ourselves, there's no immediate consequences to not doing the thing. Say, you tell yourself, I'm going to walk 30 minutes every day. Well, what happens if you don't? Nothing. Like literally nothing. your life just goes on. You just haven't walked that day. It's one of the reasons why I'm so outspoken and a proponent of external accountability. When we go to school, we need to have professors. They walk us through the process. In business and our work life, we need to have mentors who are going to guide us in the right direction. In health, we need coaches, because without that external accountability, someone to hold our hand to the fire, it can be really challenging to develop that habit of self-accountability, especially in the beginning. When we're developing new habits, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks before a habit starts, but it can take 90 days of consistent action before it really takes hold and starts to feel as simple as what it really is. Things like healthy habits are no more difficult than unhealthy habits. It's the shift from one to the other that's challenging. It's getting from point A to point B where all the pain arises. There's another really great quote on this, and whoever wrote it, I wish I knew who it was. The author's unknown, but it says, marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. Obesity is hard, being fit is hard, choose your hard. Being in debt is hard, being financially disciplined is hard, choose your hard. Communication is hard, not communicating is hard, choose your hard. Life will never be easy. It will always be hard, but we can choose our hard. Pick wisely. And I think that's so powerful because, being financially responsible is hard. Taking money, putting it aside, not spending it on the things that we honestly really want to spend it on in that moment. It's really hard. But also being broke is hard, and not even having the money to spend on the necessities is hard. Making healthy choices, it's really hard. Eating the right foods, taking the right actions, being accountable to exercising every day, it's hard. But not being healthy is hard. Muscle and joint problems, diabetes is hard. Heart problems is hard. Blood pressure is hard. Taking medications is hard. But we get to choose our hard, because going into it knowing like this isn't going to be easy. Whatever you decide, it's not going to be easy. It might seem easy in the moment. Healthy choices might seem hard in the moment. Communicating with our spouse might seem hard in the moment. Saving for retirement might feel hard in the moment. But if you zoom out and you look at the challenges that come with being broke, having a failed marriage, not being healthy, the hard steps towards those positive changes, I mean, they pay off in dividends that you can't even really measure them. So reframing and shifting the mindset from, maybe perfection to progress can start to make these simple tasks feel easier. And there's some really fantastic strategies for bridging the gap between knowing and taking action. Number one would be to break it down and write it down. Make the task even simpler than it already seems. So start with a small, manageable goal that's going to help build confidence, right? So walking 30 minutes a day, it's great. A great place to start. Instead of walking 30 minutes every day, start with 5 or 10, right? Even if you feel busy, even if you feel overwhelmed, putting aside 5 to 10 minutes is something virtually anybody can do. Or if your house is a mess, instead of committing to cleaning the whole house every day, set a timer for 30 minutes. Say, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to do as much as I can. And that's going to have to be good enough. Instead of saying, I need to lose 50 pounds, just know we can only lose 1 pound at a time, regardless of it's 10 pounds or 110 pounds. Break it down into weekly goals. What are some changes I can make today to support my body, increase protein and healthy fats and fiber, give my body the right nutrients on a 1 week timeline? Because anybody can do something for a week. And the second part of that is writing it down, because a goal in our brain is not a goal. It only becomes an achievable goal, I should say, once it's written down on paper, once you've mapped out the different steps it's going to take to achieve it, and then started to take those small actions. This is where habit stacking can be really beneficial. Pairing the new action that you're trying to take with an existing habit. Something I always encourage, like if someone's having a difficult time taking supplements, they just frequently forget. I recommend putting it in front of something that you do consistently every day. Right next to the sink you brush your teeth in, for example. If you're going to brush your teeth every day, supplements are right there. That's going to be your reminder to take your supplements. I actually keep mine right here at my workstation. I'm going to take my supplements every single day. I know I'm going to sit at my workstation every single morning. So that's my internal cue or reminder to take my supplements. Another example, like for savings, building up financial savings, many banks will help to automate that process for you. Instead of, getting the paycheck, cashing it, and then figuring out where to go, many banks will automatically, if you set it up, redirect a certain amount or certain percentage of a paycheck into a savings account for you. You can't spend what you don't see. And so if it just doesn't show up in your checking account, if it doesn't show up in your spending account, you mentally won't even factor it into your spending each month. Again, I'll mention accountability. Having someone else to check on your progress really can make all the difference. Help with motivation, support, kind of hold your hand through the difficult times, give you a step up. That way, even when you're feeling overwhelmed, you feel like you have someone in your corner to help you get to the next step. Another strategy would be to track your progress. This is especially going to be important when results aren't immediate. Tracking small wins, right? Again, use the weight loss example. If someone wants to lose 50 pounds, celebrate every 5 pounds lost. You only have 10 of those benchmarks until you hit that ultimate goal. But if you're waiting until you hit 50 pounds lost, you're going to be waiting a long time, and you might feel frustrated along the way, or like you're not making progress as fast as you thought you should. But celebrating those smaller wins along the way can help keep us motivated to keep going. Now, the last strategy I want to share here is to make it emotional. For me, I found this to be the most impactful in my own life. Ask yourself, why is doing this important for me? Write those reasons down. Again, if it's not on paper, it doesn't exist. It's just an idea in your head. Write those reasons down. If you want to become healthier, why is that? Well, say you want to come off your medication, you're diabetic, you have high blood pressure. Why is that important to you? Well, maybe you want to spend more time with your kids and grandkids. Why is that important for you? Get as granular as you can. Go as deep as humanly possible until you really feel the connection between that goal and your emotions. I know this might sound silly. I mentioned earlier that I have a habit of killing plants, and it's not intentional. I love plants. I want to have them in my surrounding, but I was in a bad habit, or not in a good place, to be consistent with watering them. And after killing plant after plant after plant, I finally did something. It might sound ridiculous, but it's totally helped me. I named my plant. So now I have Gary. Gary sits with me in my office all day. And so if I start to see the plant get a little droopy, it's like, oh, Gary, I'm sorry, man, I'm going to get you some water. Just by naming my plant, it's helped me build this tighter emotional connection with it. And now I imagine Gary retiring with me. I'm going to keep Gary alive as long as I can. So whether it's big or small, I encourage all of you, pick a simple task, something you've been putting off. You know it's something you need to do, but you've been putting it off because it seems too hard. And just commit to doing it for a week. Go through the steps, break it down, write it down, create the habit stacking, find someone to be accountable to, track your progress, and then build that emotional connection. And then don't be shocked if after the week you set another weekly goal, and you're going to want to continue doing it after that. And the longer you do it, I can almost guarantee the easier it's going to feel. So that's our episode for today. I certainly hope this is going to help a lot of you create your own compound actions, the small things that can create massive change. Stay healthy out there, and I'll catch you on the next episode.